ora everyone, ko Dan Walker Tukunua. I'm from Taranaki, grew up in Christchurch, but now live up here in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. My role is New Zealand Channel Sales Manager. I look after our partners, and I'm also the Global Co-Chair of Indigenous at Microsoft.
Kia ora. Lydia.
Kia ora, ko Lydia Konoe tuku ingoa. I also grew up in Otahi, Christchurch, sounds like I'm copying you.
Yeah.
And now I live in Auckland. And I take care of our primary and secondary education space, which is, I think, the coolest job at Microsoft. So we work really closely with our education partners, the ministry, and the schools themselves.
Kia ora.
Hello again. I said hello to you earlier when I did the intro. Shireen Chetty. I lead the Asia team, the Asia Specialist Team Unit. But I also have an immense passion for women in tech, and I would love to talk to you a bit more about that later on. And still within my 30 seconds, moved to New Zealand 16 years ago from South Africa with my husband and 2 children, which has been the most challenging yet rewarding move that we've ever made.
Awesome.
Hi everyone, I'm Sohee Lee and I grew up in the North Shore, Auckland. I'm a technical specialist intern, so pretty new, like only 4 months here, and I work under Shireen's team.
Awesome. All right. Welcome everyone. Good to have you here. And thank you all, by the way, for spending time with us. It's been awesome to have you all here with us, and I hope it's been a really valuable time. Some of you may have been here for the 3 days. So we talked about tech getting to that #1 spot. How do we all as an industry play a role in that? And I guess before I start throwing the questions at the panelists, one of the things I wanted to just kind of have a chat about as a group, what are some of the things that would need to happen? What are some of the challenges we need to overcome as an industry, as a country, if we're going to get to that point? Is any kind of top of mind things? Sir, is that? Skilling, yeah. Yeah. The image of New Zealand as a tech kind of hub. Yeah. Any other thoughts? We've got some guests in here today. Can I call out to you to throw in any ideas?
I guess trying to address the stigma of entering the tech industry, because I come in I had no idea what you guys actually do.
Yes, awesome, thank you. So you've been at this, a few students that have been in here today, shadowing some of the folks in here and getting a bit of an insight into a day in the life. So welcome, thank you. So yeah, changing people's perceptions of tech. All right, so we'll take those. They're all really good points, and let's start throwing to the panel. So Dan, let's start with you. This is almost like that question about changing people's perceptions of tech. I guess first question is, one of the issues with tech, and we need, if we're going to be #1 export earner, we need more people in tech. And one of the issues we have is we've got a diversity issue in tech. Only 27% of people who work in tech in New Zealand are women, 4% are Māori, and less than 3% identify as Pacific people. So if we can change those numbers, by default, we'll bring a whole lot of new talented people into the industry. So first question, Dan. Why do you think it is that number for Māori and Pacific peoples is so low in tech?
It's how long you got? There's a lot to it, but I'll summarise it as best as I can. First of all, there's a stigma, and this starts even at the parents and the school teachers. When we're thinking about Māori and Pacifica, they're very much led by their community, and the people who have promise are funneled into certain areas, but generally not tech. They'll go to be a doctor or they'll go to be a lawyer. And part of that is a representation issue. Our families need to see themselves reflected within tech. If we don't see our aunties, uncles, cousins in tech, we don't think, actually, this is a safe space for our kids to go to. So that's a supply issue. And on the demand side of it, we actually need to think about how we recruit. The nature of our recruitment ads. We've got to think about our cultures. Is it a safe culture? Is it a culture that actually is celebrating Māori and Pacifica? We talk about the harakeke and the trees and how the birds come. We always are trying to have pipelines and strategies to pull more Māori and Pacifica into tech, but we actually need to work on the harakeke. We need to focus on our culture, so it's a place where Māori and Pacifica want to come. There's many and layered issues to it, but those are sort of the high level, I'd say.
Sure, Dan, appreciate that. And I'll come back in a little while maybe and ask, what are some of the things that we can do? But sticking with that that idea around kind of changing the perception, Lydia, you work with schools up and down the Motu, and from primary school right through to high school, am I right? Okay, and so I wonder what your thoughts are on this. Like, at what point do we need to, be getting tech into kids' heads as a thing? And what is it that we can do to inspire kids at an earlier age, particularly through the school system, to get into tech?
Lots of things. I think I'll take a step back. The digital technologies curriculum came into New Zealand and was made mandatory from the beginning of 2020. So that means all students from year 1, year 2, through to year 11 or 5th form, depending when you were last at school. But that is that is very foundational, and that is very, very early. So there is a lot more work that needs to be done. I think, I challenge how we think about sport in this country. We've got Ripper Rugby, super grassroots, getting kids from super young thinking about it. I think we should be thinking about technology in the same way. It doesn't need to be super flash. It doesn't need to be really exhaustive, but get students, at those young age to just be tinkering, to be playing. And I think that's something that industry can lean into. Numeracy and literacy and the pastoral care that teachers need to do is really exhaustive. To then ask them to then cultivate the next batch of innovators is pretty tall order. And so I think there's, kind of to Dan's point, I think there's a representation thing. And I think as young as we can, I think I think where we should start.
So what I'm hearing is we've got Ripper Rugby, we need to have Ripper Developer.
Yeah, absolutely. Make it fun, make it vibrant. And rebrand it. If the people have heard of TikTok and they're coming in some Air Jordans, even better.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, I like that. One of the call-outs when I said what are the issues or the challenges that we've got to overcome, someone talked about skilling, I think at the back there, thank you. That is a critical point. It goes back to this idea. I mean, we're investing as Microsoft in building a hyperscale data center region, so 3 massive data centers here in Tamaki Makaurau that will kind of be a foundation layer for a whole lot of incredible cloud services. So that's cool. That's some of the kind of the foundational infrastructure that helps us take that next step. But when we talk about that as a business, we talk about the fact that there's 100,000 new jobs that we have to fill to realize the potential of that. And that's right across the ecosystem. So training's critical. And Shireen, I wanted to come to you. You lead the Azure specialist team at Microsoft, and your team work with a whole lot of some of the biggest, most interesting, but also complex businesses and organizations across Aotearoa. What are you seeing from your perspective, some of those organizations do around skilling and training, and what can we do as Microsoft, or what are we doing as Microsoft to support that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think that the problem is pervasive across public sector or enterprise commercial and education, every sector you can think of. And it's because we have the same size of pie, if you like, and we're just cutting it into smaller slices. And it's how do you then look at reskilling, upskilling people from other industries? And that's what I'm hearing a lot of partners talk about specifically. When I talked about the intro this morning and how we have digital innovation at the core of what we're doing, but we just don't have the people that we can enable those businesses to execute on their revenue or societal objectives. So some of the things, an initiative that we've come up with at Microsoft that we're working with partners and customers on is called 10K Wahine. You might have seen it in the media, and it's really an idea that was born about how do we help lower the perceived barrier of entry, because I think you called it out earlier, you didn't really know what we did before you came in today. And sometimes there's this perception that you have to have a computer science degree to work in technology. Yeah. And it's really about awareness, inspiration, then providing sessions like today to help educate people, providing certification. But the real big thing, which to get to your answer to your question, Matt, is how do we provide mentoring and coaching for people coming into our sector? Because it is daunting if you've been And a story I heard of someone about a year and a half ago was a cabin attendant, and her role was displaced with COVID. And she had come into the tech sector, done study for 6 months, and felt confident to come in, but still needed the support when she joined the partner that she did. And so within Microsoft and our partners, we're providing a mentoring kind of buddy system to help people be comfortable. And that's how we'll grow skills. We can't rely on the border anymore to get skills in. We can't rely on the same skills we have. We've just got to grow that pie.
Thank you, Shireen. That's cool. And that 10K Wahine program is awesome. And it's like, it is what it says on the tin, right? How do we inspire 10,000 women in New Zealand to engage with tech, as a career option, as a pathway? So you said something that was quite interesting there, and a perfect segue onto our last panelist, Sohi. So you talked about not everyone who comes into tech has got a computer science degree. You don't have a computer science degree, do you? And so I'm really interested to kind of, for you to share your experiences, because you did a marketing degree. If you look at your CV, you've got some cool kind of marketing experiences that you've done. At what point did you decide to go, actually, I'm going to be a specialist in public cloud and Microsoft Azure, and I'm going to work in a team that advises big organizations across New Zealand on how to use public cloud, as opposed to going into marketing? What was your journey?
Yeah, so as a bit of background, I studied marketing and information systems at University of Auckland. And as he said, I have done, it's like a typical marketing student, like someone who's involved in digital marketing, like Instagram, social media, design, all that sorts of stuff. That's me. So when I tell my friends, oh, I'm in Microsoft as like a technical specialist, they're like, huh? Like, why? And I questioned that to myself as well, but I think marketing is a skill that comes really naturally to me. And I think that's kind of like, to the developers, maybe coding is like a natural thing for them. So to me, marketing is like not really like, it was like my comfort space. So when the opportunity for Microsoft came about, I was like, oh, it's something that I haven't been really like exposed to before at uni. And because I have my information systems background, I have been exposed to digital transformation and change and innovation. So it didn't really scare me too much. And throughout my whole recruitment process, I realized that my marketing degree isn't a setback for me. It's actually like an asset. And I could use that towards this position where I am to understand consumers, but just on a tech perspective, not like design or marketing. So I think that was like my little pivotal moment. And I'm super grateful where I am, because I can actually use my skills from marketing to just understand people. And because I feel like that's kind of lacking sometimes in the tech industry. And it's kind of the stereotype that, oh, you need a coding background, but you genuinely do not. So,
that's awesome. And I want to shout out to everyone who doesn't have a coding, tech or engineering background. Yay! So I think I did German, art history, politics at university. So I don't know how I ended up at Microsoft, but I luck. I think, but yeah, that's cool. And one of the things I think we need to think about is that kind of lifelong learning scenario. And so I'm going to come back up the panel this way, back to you again, Sohi, because I think that lifelong learning piece is really interesting and really important, and it touches on that point that Shireen made about how do we help people that maybe are retraining. So from your experience of coming from marketing into tech and then an intern role at Microsoft, what is it that you think that tech companies, and lots of us here work for tech organizations, what is it that you think tech companies should be doing to support that tech development, or non-traditional people from non-traditional tech backgrounds to get into tech?
I think it's having advocating for like the early careers like myself. And as you mentioned, like you don't know what actually people do in tech, right? Like I genuinely thought it was just coding all the time. Like, no, it's not like that. And I think it's kind of advocating for the high school students and university students, like going in and maybe showcasing like what you do. And I think that's a really important factor, because at university, you're literally filled with just the big companies, and it's just like, let's say if you do business, you're just looking at the big four, like consulting, that's my way to go. Or if you're doing like engineering, you're just looking at the engineering firms. You don't really look at the other options that are out there, like Microsoft. When I came in, I was so shocked at all these like opportunities I could do. So I think as we look forward into the future, it'll be amazing for tech companies to really advocate for that. One thing that Microsoft has been really doing good at is a 10K Wahine. I've been involved in a stretch project called DigiGirls, which is enabling students from year 9s to 13 within Māori and Pacifica backgrounds, or just in Aotearoa in general, to get a taste of what tech is like. And we have like workshops and have these girls in like hybrid environments and like have all these like cool stuff, so they know like they can get into tech even if they're not technical. And I think that's something like a cool initiative that can be initiated like at all tech companies, you know? And that's super fun. It's like super meaningful, and yeah, I think that's something that you could look into.
Awesome, thank you. Inspiring story. So Shireen, you know, we've talked a little bit about, so he just talked a little bit about what tech companies could be doing. You're in a tech company. Tell us a little bit about what you do outside of your day job, if you like. If your day job's helping customers use Azure and cloud to support their own missions, that's your day job. What do you do around that to support diversity and inclusion within the business and within the industry?
So look, I think we're pretty privileged at Microsoft where we get to do these stretch projects and work on what we call employee resource groups, and that's what I do with women at Microsoft. There's no separation. So the passions we have about creating gender equality and working on diversity and inclusion lends itself to how you have your customer conversations, because they're facing the same problems. So that's the beauty and the blend of it. But some of the very specific programs we're executing with 10K Wahine as part of this employee resource group is looking at the mid-career sector. So he talked a little bit about the early in career, which is your secondary and tertiary students. So a colleague and I, Dom Pringle and myself, are working on mid-career. So I touched on it earlier. So organizations that are looking for talent will come and talk to us and go, I've got this problem. I met somebody on Monday and they have 96 open roles that they just cannot fill, and it's all in the professional services space and in Azure. So I have a vested interest in both fronts to help them.
Fill those roles.
Exactly. And so we come together and brainstorm about how we do this. And so we've now partnered with a company called Tipakenga to help get people the comfort of going through the technology information segment of the process of learning. You can learn by yourself with MS Learn, which I think somebody talked on in one of the sessions earlier as well, and helping these women specifically, because that's the pillar I'm part of, get confident and comfortable with entering into tech. But importantly, Matt, we've now have customers and partners coming to us to say, you've trained these people, how do we get access to the pool of resources? So it's very interconnected. There's nothing you do in isolation, which is the impact we want to have for society at large, really. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's cool. Working in a partner team at Microsoft, I get to talk to a whole lot of our partners, the Datacoms and Sparks, Vodafones of this world, and many, many others. And there's just so much energy for this, for engaging new people to come into the industry. So that's really, really cool. I want to make this kind of news you can use. So Lydia, let's talk about what people can do. So many of the organizations that you work with, or you in your own capacity, you know, might be doing stuff or thinking about how you can support others to get into the industry or develop skills. But one way that you can is get engaged with your local school. And we talk about it a lot at Microsoft, actually, which is, you know, a lot of us are parents or aunts, uncles, you know, we know kids, we're all in our communities, there are lots of schools. And so if people wanted to get engaged with a school and perhaps as a bit of a volunteer piece of work or stretch goal for themselves, help a school bring a tech program to life for kids, what are some of the things that you would kind of say are some tips?
Other than the Ripper Rugby for tech.
Yeah, so you got that. Ripper Dev, yeah.
Ripper Dev.
What else? What other tips would you give people that want to get involved and support schools?
I think I would start with, you actually mentioned it, Dan. I think it's identifying the different stakeholders in a school. So we always focus on students, but actually if we empower teachers, that can be even more impactful. You know, you might have 10 students come in, but if you have 10 teachers, they might see 1,000 students collectively in a day. So if you also think about empowering those teachers, you might think, oh, we'll do some work experience. invite the teachers, do a dedicated day for the teachers. So don't forget them. Whānau, they might come into Microsoft for a day, a group of students, and say, oh my God, it's amazing, I want to work in tech. And the family might turn around and say, no, that's not a pathway that we're interested in, or we don't understand it, so we can't support it. So that's another audience group. I'd say if you are looking to engage with the school, think about having a whānau evening. Invite them in. Get them to meet who their kids are going to be hanging out with. Also, like from a safety perspective, probably add some confidence as well. Whānau is another massive one. I would say try and engage with a school that's local to you. So either local to you personally, where you live, or local to where your office is based. Understanding that community and that culture, wherever it is going to be even more critical. And schools really appreciate you understanding that community. I would say, try and engage your early in career folks, which I think Maddie Sohi mentioned as well. Our SLT are great, but I would say the students don't care. They don't care if they're the CEO or they're the whatever. They want someone that's cool, that looks like them, that listens to the same music. So engage your early in career, and it also gives them an amazing opportunity. So other things, I would say the Ministry of Education has a raft of programs that they're working on in conjunction with NZ Tech. So it doesn't have to be something that you create from scratch yourself that's super time intensive. You can just tap into those programs as well. What else have I got on my brain? That might be
That's
enough
awesome.
for now.
I was just going to say, I love that thing about teachers. Like if anyone here has worked with the school through kids or neighbours or friends, one thing you know is that teachers are overworked and underpaid, and they've got to cover heaps of stuff. And when you say to them, right now you've got to go and inspire kids around tech, they're like, oh, where do I start? So I love that point. Even just, adopt a teacher and say, here's some cool ideas or here's some resources. And as you say, we've got resources at Microsoft. Ministry of Education has heaps. So we would all love to point you in the right direction for some cool resources if you're up for that. And that would be a fun thing to do to earn your volunteer badge of life. So Dan, I just want to kind of finish on this, and then we'll see if there's any questions. We talked about, why don't we see more Māori and Pacific people in tech today? And you gave some really good insights into that. I guess the flip side to that question is, what could we or should we be doing as an industry, as a community, to change that?
Yeah, I think if we're going to change the dynamic of the IT industry, we need to look past the CV. I'm also someone who dropped out of high school, and this guy hired me. So thanks, and I reported to Shireen and Samir. So I haven't reported you guys yet, but
That's coming up.
but if I look at a lot of Māori, only 12% will make it into university, and then less again who will actually complete university. Even Microsoft has strong rules, strict global rules around internships has to be people with university degrees. So instantly we lock out a whole bunch of Māori and Pacifica. So we've got to look past the CV, and Māori and Pacifica are they're very high on contribution capital. And what's that? It's the fact that they will be outside of their CV, they'll be contributing largely to their community, to marae, to their whānau, hapu, iwi, and you've got to consider that they'll probably be doing a lot of leadership in there. They'll probably be doing a lot of interaction with others and collaborative skills and all of these things that are important for tech. So look past the CV is one thing I'd say. The other one is in terms of the opportunity, I think there's a government role here, and NZ Tech as well. I'm pushing them because I come from the whānau. Yes, I've dropped out of high school, but my whānau came through the trade training scheme, which was really strong in the 70s because they saw this gap of modernising Māori or urbanising Māori. They wanted to get them skills in trades, and so my whānau went through that. In terms of now, we've got I think it's 4,000 open roles in tech. It's yes, we can open up the floodgates and try and get more in, but actually there's 8,000 Māori of employable age who are unemployed in Auckland. That's a great opportunity, and there's a great opportunity for us around a tech trade skilling type opportunity there as well. So no, I think there's different ways that we do it. There's partnering with industry, government, and of course, the people who are actually doing the work. There's mentorship opportunities, coaching, and making sure that they know that this isn't a place where they're going to actually. I'll just finish with, when I started at Microsoft, there were 2 Māori, Venus, myself, I knew, and then in terms of I wanted to find my people. That's why I worked hard to build Indigenous at Microsoft. When I got a global 3,000 people in a global reach. So these are all people who are whānau, and they give you a place when things get tough in Microsoft, which they do. I can go to these people. So I think that's another thing as well. Find spaces to build community within your organisation so that Māori and Pacific can feel connected.
Kia ora, Dan. Awesome. So some cool ideas there. I hope that's been kind of interesting and thought-provoking. We've probably got time for a couple of questions. Yeah, and then I won't stand between you and what's on the other side of those doors. Any questions? Sir? Yeah.
Hi, my name's Cam. Do you think the recruitment process at most larger organisations is a bit broken? Because I'm speaking personally, I've applied for jobs at a number of different organisations, Xero, for instance, and you never hear back at all.
Yeah.
So how are they actually selecting people, given that there's what's called a skills shortage?
Shireen, is that one for you? Because you're kind of in that.
Shireen, can you just repeat the question, just sort of? Yeah.
Sure. What was it? Cam, was it?
Cam.
The way I heard the question is there a problem with recruitment as a broad question, and you've had a personal experience where you've applied and have not heard back? I would have to agree with you, speaking very generally. My experience, as being someone who's also applied for jobs before and now as a hiring manager. The reason for that, I think, is the process that supports a large company. But that does sound like an excuse as well. But that's just an observation of what I've seen. I can share with you what we're trying to do differently at Microsoft, which supports the conversations we've all had here today. And I can back that up with a conversation I had with somebody today who is not what we would see as a typical candidate applying for a job. So within my group, which is a specialist team unit, there's 6 managers, and we agreed amongst ourselves that we're going to look at our network and look for skills that may be at a 60 or 70% fit of what we need to do the job. And we would provide what I talked about earlier in terms of the wraparound services for the other 30%, maybe 50%, because we like people. It's a high performance culture, so we typically operate at 120%. But it's making that concerted effort to do something different. Whereas if you look through what Dan was talking about, if you look through the typical job descriptions that we publish, it's, must have a degree, should have 10 years experience, and it's very scripted. So it comes down to the humans that then go, actually, I know Cam's got this experience that's a transferable skill here. I'm prepared to work with us, which is an effort on my part to bring this individual into the business. And amongst the 6 managers, we discuss it and make a decision if we're prepared to do that. So I think it comes down to the individual organizations making this shift. Otherwise, we'll all be here next year this time talking about the skills shortage, unless we do something different. Yeah. So I don't know if that helps you specifically, but it was acknowledging that you're not wrong.
That's awesome. Sorry, there was one question over the back here. Was there? Yeah, so the gentleman behind you. Yeah, Mr. T-shirt.
My name's Graham.
Hey, Graham.
So the new region, how did the hiring go for that, and how did you apply what you just talked about to that hiring process? And I'm assuming there is a skills shortage, right? So I'm assuming you've had to go outside of New Zealand to bring in some of those people. No,
I might defer to you.
Yeah. Jimmy, quick, we've got just the right guy.
Just for 2 seconds.
This is Jimmy, everyone.
COVID was our friend, so we've not brought anyone in. Totally, but we've also, we're quite lucky in a lot of the roles where we can take the apprenticeship model as well. So we initially had struggles because people had different expectations in the marketplace. And then we worked and we used the social network channels and some of the existing to push much, much deeper into the networks. And it is more of an apprenticeship model. So we've gone heavy on the people that are ultimately in charge, the managers, that's non-negotiable because there's a lot of accountability. But as they form out their teams, we've taken more of an apprenticeship model locally to be able to support and build the skills base. So that's been a balance. But no one's coming from overseas because they can't.
And
So
have you been able to diversify it?
that's been completely the drive. And that's another part of the reason why we chose Auckland as well, because you've got a larger talent pool. These are not work from home hybrid jobs. These are literally you're going to the office and this is where you're going to work. So you had to balance that. But it has been, because initially we failed. We didn't fail, it was hard. So we had to adapt, we had to change, we had to try different approaches to be more successful in that space.
I've got a quick question, mate. Is it cold in here?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, there might be a couple of other questions, but what I suggest is let's close it out, go next door, grab something to eat, grab a drink, and we can have those questions just face to face. But thank you very much, everyone. Hope that was